Well, good morning, guys. I am heading into Death Valley National Park right now. It's about 2,600 feet and I'm in this super gravelly area. And look at this, we still got stuff blooming and developing interestingly. Let's talk about some of the gravel flora we can find here, because these gravel areas are quite interesting, but the most common one I'm seeing is this guy, Eriogonum inflatum, a really cool, unique looking plant from the Mojave Desert that's actually extremely common. As the name implies, it's got this super inflated stem, which has the obvious purpose of basically allowing this plant to grow taller than it would if it just made a solid stem. So it's got like a bit of air pressure in it when you squeeze it. So essentially it just uses this air pressure so it can, grow taller and stiffer without having to expend so much energy. Look at that, there's a bit of a Sphinx moth caterpillar right there. They can get really big, because obviously Sphinx moths are pretty big. They include some of the largest moths out, well, really anywhere, but especially in the desert here. And yeah, it's just a super common plant. There it is with some of its flowers. Obviously, Eriogonum is a very diverse genus in the deserts of the Mountain West. Very well developed out here, and one of the largest genera. I think it is the largest in Polygonaceae, actually. But there's a lot of other cool things here. Oh my gosh, look how inflated this one is. Yeah, let's check out some of the other things you can find here. As far as shrubs, we have this thing. This is Atriplex hymenelytra, also known as desert holly. Well, it's not related to holly at all. It's more like an amaranth kind of thing. That's what the Atriplexes are. You can see its leaves certainly look a little bit hollyish, but it's definitely not a holly. It's actually probably the most drought hardy, one of the toughest plants. I know I said Anulocaulis occidentalis is the toughest plant in North America, but this one gives it a run for its money. They live on super alkali, dry, gravelly, hot sites. It's like a quintuple fret. And of course you have the Creosote, or Creosote as I sometimes call it, the Larrea tridentata. Very important species in the family Zygophalaceae out here. There's a few other Larrea species in the Americas, but all of them are found in southern South America. So that's likely where this plant distributed itself from. And something that's interesting I learned about these is that the Mojave, Chihuahua, and Sonoran populations all have different numbers of chromosomes. I can't remember what number it is, but I think it goes something. I think it's like 26 pairs for the Chihuahuan ones, 52 for the Sonoran, and 78 for the Mojave plants. So, but they might, in a sense, be considered different species, though no one really does that. But it is certainly notable. You can see some galls on them too. There's actually quite a lot of gall species that affect the. Oh, there's a flower. There's quite a lot of gall species that affect the creosotes, or creosotes again, as I like to call them. They are all members, I think, of the genus Asphodela. I'm pretty sure it's a gall wasp, but I mean, who can know for sure? Well, I guess I can, if I had done more research before I making this video, but I don't know, I was in a bit of a hurry. I honestly have no clue what this shrub is. It seems like it's kind of not really thorny, but it looks like it is. It's got maybe a bit of thorn to it, or prickle, and I think it bleeds this milky sap when I peel it. So I think it's some kind of Asteraceae thing in like the Chicoideae, or Sycoroideae, how you want to pronounce it. Sycoroideae is probably better, but it's named after the chicories. And I'm gonna figure out what it is though, but for now I don't really know. But it does look kind of interesting, and it certainly seems to be weathering this heat and dry really well. This is, if you guys weren't aware, what might be called a super bloom year. It's a very unscientific term, and I might elaborate on that more later. But just know that it's a year when a lot of plants are able to grow very well due to abundance of rainfall. Typically it has to be around November, and from like November to January. If it falls too early, it'll just all evaporate and not do anything. But there was a lot of November rains. We had some continued rains in like January and February. That's part of this. But now we're in like the most intense heat wave for this time of year in the Mountain West recorded history. Anyways, this plant is Mohavea brevifolia, a member of Plantagenaceae. Very diverse family. Of course, old timers might recognize Plantagenaceae as a small family of only three or less genera, but everything's been rearranged, and now it's actually a pretty important genus And just look at this. It's actually, I read about this plant beforehand. I didn't realize it'd be so big. And it's very sticky too. And I'm noticing a lot of, actually not that sticky, tiny bit sticky, but like really more just velvety felty. And you can see another, I'm seeing actually quite a few of these sphinx moths eating it. So I guess they, or sphinx moth caterpillars I should say, eating it. So I guess that's something they like to do. And look at the cool flowers. These are very, oh, I gotta turn the ISO down. Very plantaginaceous. Again, we're about 2,600 feet. I'm going to be going further down in elevation. Things might be looking a lot more barren, even though just a week ago they would have been full of wildflowers because this heat wave has been so intense. It might be like up to 105 degrees at the very bottom. So I'm going to try and spend more time at higher elevations, but I'm actually really pleased so far. I was worried I wouldn't see anything, and it's not exactly, oh my god, look at that giant caterpillar. Whoa. The size of my finger. I know they get a little bit bigger. Again, if you haven't seen a sphinx moth or hawk moth before, they are really something else to behold. I think I'm going to move on to a new site now, but there's one other plant I want to try and find really quick. I saw it earlier. Well, these are probably some spent phacelias. I'm not exactly sure I could figure out what they are without the flowers. I mean, I just didn't really study the phacelias that much when I was filming all this. That's my fault. I should do better. That grass might be Festuca, or formerly Vulpea octiflora. It's a common annual grass out in the Mountain West. It is native for a change, not one of the crappy invasive ones, but I don't know for sure, so don't quote me on that. I'll try and figure it out before uploading this video, of course. I'm trying to find the Atrichoseris platyphylla, because that's always a really important one. Oh my god, look how fat that is. That's a great plant. It's something special. And very, I cannot overstate how common it is in the Mojave Desert. Damn, where the there it is. Oh, there's a better specimen. Okay, this is Atrichoseris platyphylla. Very clearly a member of the Sicoroideae. If I pluck a leaf off it or a stem, it would have milky sap, and it's commonly called gravel ghost because I think it just, it just appears very briefly on the gravels like this. It's a desert annual. In fact, most of the super bloom species I'm going to talk about, pretty much all of them actually, are desert annuals, because that's sort of a strategy you need to survive out in these super dry places. Amazing. Almost like all stem and just those basal leaves, which I think are a bit camouflaged. Anyways, let's head on. Actually, really quickly before I move on, this plant right here that looks a little bit ungracious with the yellow flowers slowly coming to an end, this is indeed a member of Onograceae. This is Chylismia brevipes, I believe, or Mojave gold. The other major Chylismia you might see out here is Chylismia claviformis, but I think that one has much paler flowers. This one's commonly called Mojave gold. It's a little stem from perhaps a related plant. Oh, I think I know what this thing is actually, really quickly. Well, I'll get into it in a second. This is, a member of Onograceae. It's actually surprisingly large. I thought this would be a lot smaller, but I guess this area may have got more rain or something. Or maybe they just always are this big. That's what its basal leaves look like. Again, another desert annual. Does very well in the high rain autumns and winters. Or after high rain autumns and winters. Oh my god! Look how big that caterpillar is. They just keep getting bigger. He's about getting ready to pupate. Oh, he loves that little plant, whatever that is. Tiny little phacelia down there. Oh, he's going for the grass. Man, how cool is that? Anyways, this plant here with another fat caterpillar on it is, I'm pretty sure, Anulocaulis annulatus. This is a member of the family Nyctaginaceae. Actually, I don't know if it's an annual or not, but it is very common in Death Valley. In fact, it's endemic to Death Valley, into the actual valley portion. There are some species that are endemic to the national park, but they tend to be more in the mountains, like the Panamints, wherever ranges. Nyctaginaceae is a cool family. It's in is Amaranthales? No, Caryophyllales. And yeah, it's got these hairy, prickly looking leaves. Yeah, a little bit rough. little bit of herbivore deterrence here. And I think most of its other fellow genera mates are typically more to the east, more like the deserts of New Mexico and the Chihuahua Desert, but this one's a bit of an anomaly out west here. Amazing. Okay, now I'm moving on. Okay, it is now afternoon and I'm below sea level in the parking lot for the Mesquite Dunes. But over here, I'll show you a couple other things. See, this is a bit of a non-super bloom species I've talked about in another video already, but this is Coryzanthe rigida. It is a member of the genus Coryzanthe, of course, which is known as spiny flowers, which are typically much more commonly found in the California floristic region to the west. The areas west of the Coast Ranges and the Sierra Nevadas dominated by winter rainfall and hot, dry summers, where it never really gets freezing. It often doesn't get hot, but sometimes it gets pretty hot. Only a few species, including this one, extend more into the deserty areas of the western United States, and it really is the west, more like California and Nevada. I don't think they even extend into Utah very much. And this plant here, I'm positive is shrub Tatastromia oblongifolia or Sophreticosa. I think I gotta look it up fully what the most proper name is. There might be two species as well, but it's a common amaranthaceae of the hotter deserts in the American West. These tiny little leaves, look how size they are compared to my nails, and I don't have very big fingers, if I'm being honest. There's something else earlier I said I thought was Tatastromia oblongifolia, but I was definitely wrong on that. Look, there's quite a lot of the Coryzanthe rigida, which is a perennial. This is what it looks like when it is dormant for the year or dead. Super spiny. Definitely deterring herbivory quite a lot with that. Here I think the main herbivores would be probably rabbits and the like. But yeah, it's not even gravelly, this is more cobbly than anything. And the sun came out, but I want to go see if I can find any more gravels around here. Okay, I'm back up to 2,000 feet on elevation on the western side of the park. Here to talk some more about the gravel-loving plants we can find. A lot more of a Larrea tridentata here. Doing very well over here. And one thing I've seen that's really interesting to me is this plant growing on some of the wildflowers and on some of the creosote as well. This is Cuscuta denticulata, known as desert dodder, spelled D-O-D-D-E-R. It's a parasitic plant in Convolvulaceae. So I guess when it produces flower, they might look quite a bit like a morning glories, but they're unrooted, and they just parasitize everything they can get their hands on. They're quite nasty, not necessarily this species, but some are quite nasty crop pests in certain areas. These ones are enjoying the creosote or Larrea tridentata quite a lot. It's also seeing some of these plants over here now. This is a species of ambrosia. It might be Ambrosia demosa, or Ambrosia, I can't remember what one is, but there's a few ambrosias commonly known as burrowweeds that are quite drought tolerant, tend to be perennial bushes. Ambrosia is of course a ragweed, so this is basically a ragweed, meaning it's wind pollinated, and yeah, interesting stuff in my opinion. I'm not very familiar with the ambrosias, or really a lot of Asteraceae, especially in the deserts, but they're a very important group to know if you're out here. There's a spent, probably from past years, Eriogonum inflatum, which is also, that's a perennial, by the way, if I didn't mention it earlier. But yeah, and obviously shrubs are generally perennial. And some of these are very tough plants, among the toughest in North America. Able to grow basically as hardy as the creosotes are. We're in super intensely dry areas out here in Death Valley and in the Colorado Desert, which is like the dry portion of the Sonoran along the Colorado River, and into Baja California. There's a few other wildflowers I saw too. I might see some cacti if I go far enough, but I don't know if I'm going to do that. Now, if you guys are wondering why is Death Valley so dry or so hot, there's really nothing that special about it other than the fact that it just happens to be the lowest valley in the Basin and Range region. Because this is a whole area where the crust is stretching and faulting into blocks that slide against each other. Oh, there we go. That's got to be a Puncha basilaris, the beaver-tailed prickly pear. It's notable by the fact that it doesn't have spines like a lot of other prickly pears, but it does have the annoying prickly glaucids, which can get in your skin and will just stay there forever, and then like a month and a half later you'll get a inexplicable like a bit of a pimple or pustule where the little hairs were left in your skin. It takes you a second to realize. These ones have not blooming yet, obviously, but they're getting ready to. Very cool plant. But anyways, the whole Great Basin and Range region is basically just splitting apart slowly. Where the crust is very thin here, and some places just happen to be deeper valleys than ever, and Death Valley is the very deepest. So, you know, you go lower in elevation, the temperature gets hotter, and precipitation gets less. Other valleys that are nearby and really deep, like the Saline Valley, are almost as hot and dry as Death Valley is, but not quite. The Panamint Valley, meanwhile, like Owens Valley, not far from here, doesn't get shallow or deeper than, any more shallow than 4,000 feet above sea level, so it tends to be actually relatively wet, but it'll still feel fairly dry. It overall supports a much more lush vegetation, generally speaking. Of course, as I said, that's all relative. I can see how it's a little hard to convey this, but you can really see deep into Death Valley right now. Like you feel like you're way above it from up here, and you kind of are because you're 2,000 feet above sea level, and you guys all know that Death Valley goes below sea level. And this here is the other Phacelia I was talking about in some of my other videos. This is Phacelia crenulata, which I guess likes the higher elevations, relatively speaking, than Phacelia calcifolia. See, it's got the sort of almost compound leaves, so it's pretty distinct from the Phacelia calcifolia. I haven't seen any Phacelia calcifolia not near or below sea level, while this is 2,000 feet above sea level, obviously. So I should have looked at the plants before I said I couldn't really tell them apart. They're obviously pretty easy to tell apart once you see their leaves. But yeah, that's what it looks like. Well, suddenly I'm above 4,000 feet in elevation and nothing is really blooming anymore. It's just not been warm enough yet for the flowers up here to start to emerge. But this interesting thing is not something I'd be able to see bloom until September, because it is Stenleia pinnata, a member of Brassicaceae known for its beautiful yellow flowers. That's a stem from years past. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I'm about 80% sure. And there's another species of Stenleia you can see around here, but it doesn't look like that one. You can see this in Utah as well, for my Utah fans. And I think it's a hyperaccumulator of selenium, or some other heavy metal. So much so that it might not even be good forage for certain animals, but I just think it's a little bit interesting. It's got some very new growth right now. There's a couple other interesting things we can see here. It's years past Eriogonum inflatum. They're not quite going off here, but they're just starting to come up apparently. Okay, this has got to be some kind of a species of ephedra. Looks like it's blooming, but it's actually getting ready to put its cones out. In fact, no, we're not covered in pollen yet. I gotta figure out which ephedra this is because I'm not very good at them all the time, but I know there's certainly a few it could be. Oh. This might be shadscale or something. It's like some kind of Atriplex species. This might be a better specimen here. I don't think it's Grey Espinosa necessarily, but I got some Atriplex looking stuff going on. Is it four-wing saltbush? I highly doubt it's not that, but it looks really interesting. Wow, it just got dark all of a sudden. But everything I really want to talk about here, there's a couple of plants over this way. This, I'm pretty sure, is a species of Lycium, either Lycium cooperi or Lycium andersoni. So they are members of Solanaceae. It's part of the Lycium is the wolfberry genus, also known as the goji berry genus. So I mean, its fruit might be edible, but again, Solanaceae is a risky family to play around with. But there's a bit of a radiation of lyceums in the desert southwest, and they're all quite spiny, or I should say thorny, like this, because these are shoots. Thorns are derived from shoots, spines that are derived from leaves. There's one other thing I want to talk about, but I can't remember just now. Look how angular this plant is. Not really sure what this one is either, but it's almost like a bunch of polygons of its branches. Man, there's a lot of stuff I'm going to have to figure out later, but I'm having a pretty good time. I'm getting ready to wrap this video up, but I'm not quite ready yet. Oh, that's the thing. I forgot what it's called. It's a species of Lepidium. One second. My best guess for what this is Lepidium fremontii, also known as desert pepperwheat. I just got sunny all of a sudden. Lepidium, the only Lepidium I'm really familiar with is Lepidium draba, which is an annoying invasive from Europe. Not the worst, but it's just so common in some areas and so aggressive. I really dislike it. It's growing in that burn area I like to survey sometimes, but there are some native Lepidiums. This is might be a nice shrubby one. Maybe. I don't know. It's a little hard to tell. Okay, my goal here is to try and find Incelia farinosa. But for now I got this Sphaeralcea ambigua of a desert globe mallow. The most common one you can find in the Mojave Desert. Doing very well. We're at about 3,600 feet, heading back down now. Actually, this might be the Incelia farinosa, or maybe Incelia actini. I'm going to have to go check up on that in a second. But first, what I really wanted to talk about over here was, well, firstly, got some more of a ragweed, which is absolutely covered in pollen. Let's see if I can... Well, I got a little bit of pollen on my hand now, as you see. Yeah, if you're allergic to ragweeds, you would not want to be around that plant. But this is the Chylismia brevipes. Much more happy and in bloom right now, which is quite nice to see. See, this is actually the inferior ovary and can become a fruit. It's a lot like the Caminura and angustifolia, which is so nice. I made a video about that last year. It's called fireweed, but this plant is in the same family, Onograceae, and they produce inferior ovaries that are long. And I think they might produce fluffy seeds that tend to be wind dispersed. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to tell until I saw them open up. Okay, after consulting with Jepson's Flora, I'm pretty sure this is actually Incelia actini. Could be a different wildflower altogether, I guess, as well, but it's not farinosa, and the way you can tell it's not farinosa is because it only has one capitula per stem. That's a characteristic of actini, while farinosa tends to have multiple capitula or flower heads per stem. Of course, it's a compound inflorescence, each one of these things we see. Another thing it could be mixed up with is virginensis, which I think can maybe be found in Death Valley, but it tends to be found more to the east, like around the Virgin River, and it has much more deeply cleft teeth on the petals. These are pretty shallow, so which indicates it's actini. Now between the two, actoni tends to bloom at higher elevation, so if I go further down, I can finally conclude my Incelia farinosa that I'm looking for. Also, this looks like some kind of mat spurge, some euphorbia species, but I'm not sure I can figure it out right now. But maybe I'll identify it afterwards. Okay, I'm having a lot of trouble finding Incelia farinosa, which is really strange because it's a very common one out here. All I'm finding is more Incelia actini, which is fine. This is a really big grand one, but for now I'm going to give a tentative thanks for watching and see you next time. If you guys want to come out here and check out the super bloom, the only advice I want to give that you probably can't read anywhere is always be careful where you step, because there are a lot of Sphinx moth or hawk moth caterpillars out and about, crawling everywhere. And not only would it be really gross to step on one, but they're kind, harmless animals that grow up to become important pollinators. Like that little guy right there. They are seriously everywhere. So just be mindful. Always look out for them. So yeah, thanks for watching and see you next time. Well, now I'm just below 3,000 feet at a slightly different location. We got some different wildflowers blooming. Most notably is this guy, this Malacophrix glabrata, also known as desert dandelion. It does look a lot like a dandelion, although it's not really got the same leaves. It is definitely a Sneversicoroideae. It's really cool to see. There's also a lot of caterpillars here, and they're trying to cross the road. I've definitely seen some caterpillar roadkill, which is a bit of tragic. Really shame how much humans, even unintentionally, can mess up things. And this looks like Atrichoseris platyphyllus, but it's actually a different related plant. This is Rafinescia neomexicana. I think one way you can tell them apart is that this one seems to really like growing in other bushes, which I've noticed. Like you can look around, very few of them growing free. It's like another bush they like to grow around. And when you look closely at them, they don't have the same like large basal leaves. They just got these rather divided colline leaves. And they do have a few basal leaves, but they're very different in appearance. Again, Rafinescia neomexicana. I think Rafinesque was a very prolific biologist and botanist who named a lot of species and did rather shoddy work, but a few species still bear his name here and there. Well, it only took me until the next day and going onto the west side of the Funeral Mountains on the other side of the park to find it, but I finally got my Incellia farinosa. I guess they are more common in some mountain ranges than other. But definitely, it seems like they thrive more at lower altitudes than the Incellia actini does. So both are in bloom now. This one seems to be getting more towards the end of its bloom. And one thing that surprised me is that compared to Incellia actini, it's got considerably smaller flowers. I guess that's a sensible trade-off when you have more flowers per head, because that's a big thing that you can use to tell the two apart from each other. It's also more shrub-like. Look how large it is too. Like more shrub-like with more silvery leaves. Oh my gosh. It looks like it's got aphids or some kind of black disease all over it. That's crazy. Maybe it might be caterpillar frass too. I saw another one of those hawk moth caterpillars going all over this. And a few other ones around too, but I just can't believe it took me so long to find it. It's a pretty important wildflower shrub kind of thing. It's definitely a bit of a shrubby plant in the Mojave Desert. So-called a brittle brush. Grows at higher elevations than, like, say, creosote and desert holly and similar things, but it's still very drought tolerant and very heat tolerant. It's just not quite as much as some of these other plants. And of course, its wildflowers they got to be absolutely amazing for all the insects here that rely upon them. So now, unless I see something else amazing, I'm going to say thanks for watching and see you next time for real now.